And I now invite the Commission to hear a statement by Youth Representative Ms. Renata Co. Alvarenga, Director of Empodera Lima and co-lead of the Women and Gender Working Group of the Youth Constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change.
Your Excellencies, representatives of UN member states and fellow gender equality advocates, I have the great honor to be here today, representing global young women and girls, and most of all, representing Brazilian women. Brazil is the largest country in Latin America, and yet our leadership and decision-making spaces is still disproportional to the size of our country. When Black, Indigenous, rural, and queer young women are added to the equation, that number is even smaller. I know this issue is not exclusive to my country, and many Global South young women face similar barriers. While I'm not alone in my work as a gender equality advocate, I also recognize that many brilliant youth do not get the opportunity to be here in these high-level spaces. I plan on using my privilege to ensure young women are not left out of the conversation. As decision makers, how will you use your privilege to foster transformational change? For the past few years, I have worked as a climate justice advocate for the leadership of women and girls from Latin America in policymaking. Most recently, we have seen a positive shift in terms of gender mainstreaming in climate policy, including in climate finance and adaptation. However, despite the fact that women are among the most vulnerable groups to the effects of climate change, we still have a long way to go before we can have a gender-balanced structure in climate policy making. Empowering women and girls will lead to everlasting solutions to our biggest collective challenges. Countries with a high representation of women in parliament, for instance, are more likely to ratify environmental treaties. Young women are already changing the narrative and combating gender-based violence, for instance, fostering economic justice, defending sexual and reproductive health and rights, advocating for feminist action for climate justice, encouraging the use of technology for gender equality, and empowering feminist movements all over the world. I was born just a year after the 4th Conference on Women took place and the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action was adopted. As I celebrate my 25th birthday this year, I think back to the 25th anniversary of this agenda in 2020. It is undeniable that the substantive representation of women in these leadership spaces has increased since then. However, there's much more work to be done, and youth are powerful stakeholders in accelerating positive change. Through our bold solutions, we are committed to transforming outdated social norms that exacerbate discrimination all over the place. However, 25 years have gone by, and youth are still excluded from key political spaces. While 2020 was always supposed to be a landmark year for renewing our commitment to gender equality, it also brought some really unexpected challenges. For young women who already lived in very complex scenarios, especially in the context of occupation and conflict, the COVID-19 crisis exacerbated these realities. The digital divide was also put into focus, shedding light on the gaps in girls' education as the world went virtual. As global leaders, you have the opportunity to foster meaningful participation of youth from marginalized regions, indigenous youth, LGBTQIA+ youth, youth with disabilities, and youth, migrants, and refugees. And you can work towards an intersectional and intergenerational future for all. I ask that you do not take this opportunity for granted. And most importantly, I ask that you do not waste it. Together, we can work to accomplish the priority theme of CSW65, women's full and effective participation in decision-making in public life, as well as the elimination of violence for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. However, I must say, we are also impatient. Research shows that it will take over 250 years before women achieve equal pay, and COVID has placed a magnifying glass in the wage gap, so we need radical change now. In 25 years, when we look back at what decisions were made now, I truly hope we can honor our titles as supporters of the generation equality agenda. Change is possible with strong, resilient, and feminist leadership. But the clock is ticking. Time is indeed up. What will you do about it? Thank you.
I thank Ms. Ko Alvarenga for her statement. And at this juncture, I would like to briefly pause our meeting as the Secretary General takes his leave for other commitments. On behalf of the Commission, I would like to warmly thank the Secretary General for being with us this morning.